That is really the main focus of academic research, is arguing. Hello, art history babes. Welcome back to the Art History Babes Back to School series. Most people consider back to school time to be September, and we did as well, which is why we started this series way back then. But full disclosure, life happens. I work many jobs, and we also wrote a book and tried to keep the podcast going, so something had to give, and unfortunately, this series got pushed back. But I'm here and I'm excited to keep it going because I think it's really valuable information, and a lot of you found the first episode on how to write a research paper to be very valuable. I'm so glad that some of you actually used that method and that it worked out for you. If you haven't seen that one yet, definitely check that one out. It is a topic that ties in very much with today's episode, which is how to write a thesis statement. So while I was in grad school teaching, I noticed a lot of students didn't understand really the concept of a thesis statement, didn't understand that it was necessary in writing a research paper, didn't really know how to approach it. If you were never taught, or if that was never explained to you, that makes perfect sense. I was very lucky. I had a really amazing English teacher in high school. So she was very big on making sure we understood like formatting and sourcing and writing thesis statements from like our junior year in high school. And she gave us this really solid method for crafting a thesis statement. There are so many ways to approach a thesis statement. This is definitely not the only way, and it's not, I guess, the most sophisticated way to do it. I don't know, whatever, that's stupid. But it is a very solid way to give yourself a solid thesis and some direction with your paper. I use this method every time I've written a paper. I used it when I started crafting my thesis for my master's thesis. And also, as someone who graded many research papers, the person grading your paper will really appreciate it because it resonates to the reader in a very clear way. In my opinion, it's not convoluted. So here we go. Let's do it. Let's go for it. Figured I would just, for this video, I would just teach how to write a thesis statement the exact same way I taught it to my students in grad school. So we'll start with, what is a thesis statement? A thesis statement is essentially your argument. It is the argument that you are making with your paper. Once again, that is another very basic thing that I don't know if it's really explained to some students when they first get into college, is that your papers are supposed to have an argument. You're supposed to be arguing something. While professors do want to see an understanding of your knowledge from the class, they want you to be taking a stance and arguing some kind of an idea. That is really the main focus of academic research, is arguing. So your thesis statement states your argument in this very clear way to give your reader an idea of what you're doing with this paper. Like, it basically says, this is what I'm gonna do, and it also gives your reader an idea of how you're going to do it. So in a very bare bones kind of way, that's what a thesis statement is. What you're arguing, how you're going to argue it. And most people agree that your thesis statement should always come in the introduction. There's argument over where in the introduction, whatever, it doesn't matter. I was always taught to have it be like at the end of the introduction, like your last sentence of your introduction, but whatever. I don't think that is a really big deal personally, but it should be early on in your paper so that your reader knows what they're getting themselves into, basically. The method that I am going to teach you for writing a thesis statement is called SD3R. And what SD3R stands for is subject, direction, 3 reasons. All right, so in crafting a thesis statement, just to kind of break that down a little bit, you should have a subject. subject. Much like what I did in the how to write a research paper video, I'm gonna kind of craft a nonsense thesis statement, probably just using the first things that pop into my head. Let's see, I am looking at my Italian Renaissance art book right now, and so we're going to talk about Michelangelo. Michelangelo is our subject. Boom, subject. Then we need a direction. So a direction obviously has to do with moving somewhere. This is where you're going to use verbs. You're going to state what direction you're going in talking about Michelangelo. Obviously, endless amounts of books and resources and information has been written on Michelangelo. So you have to have a specific direction with Michelangelo. For the direction of our thesis, let's talk about the Sistine Chapel, right? Michelangelo painted the Sistine Chapel. What direction do we want to go in talking about Michelangelo and the Sistine Chapel? How about Michelangelo's painting of the Sistine Chapel represented his conflicting feelings with Catholicism. I'm making this up, so like that's something you could debate, obviously, but that's what we'll say. I do think often that the main idea of your thesis is in the direction portion, because you're kind of starting to get more specific and talking about where you're actually going with this argument. Now the last portion, the 3R, or 3 reasons. So, what 3 reasons can we think of? One reason, we could say his unwillingness to paint the Sistine Chapel. That is true. He was not excited about that project at all and kept running away, which is pretty funny to me, and the Pope kept like bringing him back to paint it. We could also say maybe some more scandalous imagery that he painted on the chapel ceiling. This actually isn't a terrible argument. I'm kind of just working off the top of my head right now. And then we'll just say like abstract approach to some images. That's a little more nonsensical, but whatever. Okay, so 3 reasons. So our subject is Michelangelo, specifically Michelangelo's painting of the Sistine Chapel. Our direction is Michelangelo's painting of the Sistine Chapel represented his conflicted feelings about Catholicism. And then our 3 reasons that we're going to use to prove that thesis are his unwillingness to paint the Sistine Chapel, scandalous imagery that he painted on the Sistine Chapel, and a more abstract approach to some images. So now that we have these 3 reasons all laid out, we basically need to use this information to prove the thesis. So we're going to take these 3 reasons, we're going to find legitimate resources that prove these points. What is also great about the SD3R approach to writing a thesis statement is it kind of lays out your paper for you. You know straight away what the subject is, you know what direction at least your argument's going in, and then the 3 reasons are really just like that's going to be like the body of your paper. If you want, you can just take those 3 reasons and be like paragraph 1, paragraph 2, paragraph 3, or page 1, page 2, page 3, and just focus on reason 1, then reason 2, and then reason 3. And so you have it all very nicely laid out for you already. It's also, in my opinion, an easy structure to alter. Because another thing you learn while you're writing research papers is like while you're doing research, a lot of times your thesis changes, and that's totally fine. And if you find new information that makes you want to change your argument a little bit, then it's really easy to just go back into that SD3R and replace something, like, oh, this reason isn't really backed very well, I'm going to replace it with this other reason. Or if you pivot on your subject a little bit but keep some of the same direction, you know, you can just remove that element of the thesis statement and pop in something new. And then, yeah, once you have this crafted, once again with a thesis statement, your first thesis statement that you write out should never be the final one. Even if you don't change your argument that much, after you write the entire paper, you should always go back and clean up your thesis statement, because it's pretty much undeniable that there will be some little tweaks that need to be made. So always, 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 after you write the whole paper, you know, read through it and go back and ask yourself, did I prove this thesis statement? If I did not, what changes do I need to make? Or also, you know, just proofread. Can it be worded better? Can I make the thesis clearer? Because having a clear thesis is how you're going to keep a reader engaged. If you're writing a research paper for an audience, or if you're writing it for a grade, like, you want your teacher or your TA or whoever to understand what you're trying to say, because you don't want to lose your audience straight off the bat. You want them to understand, and you want them to be captivated in some way. So making the thesis statement just well written and solid and understandable is huge. I think that's about it for this. Like I said, this concept works very much in tandem with the How to Write a Research Paper video. So be sure to check that out if you haven't. If you have any questions about this, please pop them down below. If you have other approaches to writing a thesis statement, please also write that down below. If you have suggestions for future videos or information you would like us to cover, anything, comments, likes, shares, all that stuff's really important. Be sure to check out the Art History Babes Patreon. We are currently working on totally revamping that baby. It's just really important for us. Like I said, on top of running this platform, I have like 3 jobs. So, you know, once again, full disclosure, this is an entirely independent project. We don't have any financing other than, you know, what we can make on the podcast and what you guys can help us out with. So we really, really appreciate any support at all. You guys are great. Thanks so much for watching. I hope this was helpful. Happy writing. Oh, I didn't even show you my unicorn mug. I don't think I've shown this in a video yet. If I have, oh well, because it's dope. I got it at a thrift shop in Miami. And yeah, I'm just a little obsessed with it. My favorite part, I think, is these little feet at the bottom. That's so cute. That's all. Have a good day. Bye.